you are an entrepreneur, a professional, a speaker, or a coach, and although you've come a long way, it's time for you to take it to the next level. We've got you. This is the Author to Authority podcast. We'll help you use authority and influencer marketing to build your business stronger and faster by publishing a book. You'll hear from guests that are thought leaders in sales, marketing, networking, communication, social media, promotion, and business leadership. Let's do it. This is the Author to Authority podcast. And now your host, the extraordinary word ninja, Kim Thompson-Pinder.
Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today, if you are looking at risk in your business and thinking, I don't know, that seems just like a little bit too risky for me, or what if it fails? What if it doesn't go right? Then you want to listen to today's episode of the Author to Authority podcast. I got with me Marty Strong, and we're going to be talking about how to see risk as an opportunity for accelerated outcomes. So I am excited for today's episode. Marty's a retired Navy SEAL officer and combat veteran. He's a novelist, a practicing CEO and chief strategy officer, and the author of Be Nimble, How the Creative Navy SEAL Mindset Wins on the Battlefield and in Business, and his second book, Be Visionary, Strategic Leadership in the Age of Optimization Set, which was released in December 2022. Marty's traveled to over 40 countries, been shot at in a few, survived cancer twice, and experienced the loss of his older son. He has spent a lifetime meeting challenges head-on, succeeding in 3 professions, anticipating crisis, and leading through crisis and chaos. Welcome to the show, Marty.
Good morning, Kim.
Wow, that is quite an impressive list there, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But first of all, I'm just going to ask you the really obvious question, because sometimes in business, you know, entrepreneurship is about taking risk, but then sometimes you don't want to take the risk. So is risk actually beneficial as an entrepreneur?
It is. I mean, I think the very definition of entrepreneur as opposed to manager or supervisor incorporates the concept of risk taking and being a risk taker. So I think that's part and parcel to that particular choice in life. If you want to throw money down and come up with a new idea, new service, new product, and get out there in the arena of ideas and compete, there's going to be risk.
Very true. But do you think it comes a point sometimes in the entrepreneurship journey where you get kind of tired of taking those risks?
Probably maybe the second or third day. I think it depends on what your constitution is. You know, if you're a natural born risk taker and fear rolls off your back like rainwater, I mean, maybe it doesn't really matter as much. Maybe you're just, resilient enough that psychologically you can cope every day. But, the average person, and entrepreneurs aren't necessarily the average person, but the average entrepreneur for sure, before they jump in and assume those risks and those potential rewards, has to contemplate the downside. And I guarantee you, everybody they know, everybody around them, most of the books that they read, most of the TV shows they watch, and whatever their personal life history is, all points to don't do it. Don't take the leap, right? Yeah. Because everybody, and psychology proves this out in research studies going back 40, 50 years. Human beings would rather take the lesser of two choices, the less risk-related choice, rather than the high reward choice. And there's even crazy things where they give you, X number of dollars where really the risk of losing is like $5, but the risk of gain is $100, and they still go with the sure thing with the $5. It's just human nature.
Can I say guilty as charged? Like, you said that, I thought, no, I don't. Yeah. Maybe I do that. Oh, that's interesting. I think this is going to be a great conversation, Marty. I do want to hear a little bit of your story. Obviously, you've had a very varied life. You've done a lot of things. So why don't you take a few minutes and share more with us, about your life and some of the things you've done and why you've decided to do some of the things you've done.
So my backstory starts in Nebraska, and it was It wasn't on a farm or anything like that, although my parents were both farm kids from the Depression era. The work ethic when I grew up, and because of my parents' background, was pretty strict. It was, really old school. Do a good job the first time, do it right the first time. If you borrow something, bring it back in better condition than you borrowed it. All those kind of old rules for conduct. There weren't very many handouts. You had to work paper routes, mowing lawns, babysitting, whatever it took to get pocket change. Even collecting old bottles, whatever, and you did it. So think about it in a way, kids back then, besides learning a kind of a blue collar work ethic that would be applicable to a job as an employee, we were also learning the basics of entrepreneurial behavior because we would take time out of our playtime and we would do that, voluntarily, not because we were directed to. And we would go out and figure out ways to raise enough cash to get us through the next 4 or 5 days of whatever fun we had planned. And that was everybody, probably from about the age of 10 on. So, and you would compete with other kids who were trying to mow lawns too. You would, when fall came, you would compete with, raking leaves for the older couples in the neighborhood. Excuse me. You do all those things. So you were engaging in kind of the marketplace and you made a reputation for yourself. You basically were either good at what you did a complete job, or you weren't. And then you started to lose business in that very confined area of the neighborhood. And then as I grew up, the emphasis was on get out there, get a job. We're not going to give you a car. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. So my early childhood, all the way up through the point where I joined the Navy at 17 was all about that. I mean, I was working in meatpacking houses. I was working in all kinds of different odd jobs, farm co-op jobs, picking corn, picking beans, all that kind of stuff. And it just seemed natural. That's what everybody my age was doing. Joined the Navy at 17. Through a mistake of orders, I ended up at the SEAL Training Command in California. And I was talked into volunteering. When I was trying to figure out a way to get where I was supposed to go, I was talked into volunteering for the program. 126 guys started the class, 13 originals, graduated 6 months later. I was one of them. And then did 20 years in the SEAL teams. After retiring, I managed money for United Bank of Switzerland and did that for about 8 years all in, and then stepped out and started working in large corporations. Now I'm a CEO of a healthcare company.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. What made you decide to write the books?
The novel, well, I'll tell you what, the true inspiration, although I always liked writing as a kid, and I was a good writer as a teenager in high school, but I was also a good writer in the military. And as everybody would probably be able to relate to, if you do something well, you get more of it. So writing is not something people like to do in general. Either as public speaking, that was another thing I was not afraid of doing. So in my military career, I found myself in the early days in the intelligence area of the SEAL business. And there's a lot of research and there's a lot of writing of reports and also opinions of what you think is going to happen, a lot of involvement in mission planning writing, and then a lot of presentation time. You're presenting all of that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I'd always want to write a book when I was young, didn't get around to it. And then I think it was 2017, I read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And in there, he has a section about living your bucket list instead of waiting for it. And his thesis is you go ahead and you list everything you want to do on your bucket list. And then you take a spreadsheet and you price it all out now. You want to go to the Galapagos Islands and see the giant turtles? Fine. How much is that going to cost? You write it out like a real vacation trip. And then you start living it. You save up the money for that specific dollar amount and you start knocking them out while you're healthy enough to do it. And also while you have a job, so you're not concerned about spending the money. And so I made this bucket list. I followed a little exercise and I realized I'd been to over, 40 something countries, a lot of them more than once. So his travel example wasn't working with me. So I wanted to learn how to play the guitar. I wanted to learn how to speak Spanish fluently, and I wanted to write a novel. And I couldn't just budget dollar. It didn't work, right? So I picked the one that I thought I could do utilizing my time, and I picked novel. So that's what got me kind of off the couch over to a laptop and start pounding out the first novel. And it was a sci-fi time travel novel. There ended up being 4 of those in the series. And then I rolled into a novel series about SEALs. There's 5 books in that series. And I donated all that money to the SEAL Veterans Foundation. And somewhere, probably around the 8th novel, I was helping all kinds of entrepreneurs and current CEOs, former CEOs, with management and leadership and decision making and mostly strategic type thoughts. Where am I in my journey as a business owner? Where should I go next? A lot of it was risk taking too. It was, I'm in my comfort zone, but nothing's changing in my business. And I realized when somebody said, "Do you have any of this stuff written down anywhere?" And I thought, well, no, I don't have any of it written. It's all in my head. So, and a lot of it was the same thing I was telling my direct reports, all my VPs and the presidents of two companies that reported to me as a CEO. So I thought, all right, I'll put it on paper. And that's how Be Nimble ended up being written and published. The same kind of thing related to strategy with Be Visionary. It was just kind of a natural 1-2 punch because Be Nimble is mostly about leadership and crisis and scaling and all those kinds of things. And it has a small amount of information about strategic planning, where Be Visionary is all about strategic planning.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Audience, we are going to take a very quick ad break here. RTI Publishing has lots of resources to help you if you are looking to write a book that's going to convert readers into clients and help you scale your business. We will be right back. Writing and publishing a book that converts readers into client and scales your business is hard, but it doesn't have to be. Get my free checklist at bit.ly/create and scale that will show you what you need to do to have your book become a well-converting lead generating tool. Welcome back, Marty. Wow, that's, I hear sometimes people's stories, and one of the things that I really like about your story is you made the decision to do something, you counted the cost, and then you paid that cost. And sometimes I think in entrepreneurship, and I don't know about you, but this has been in mine, sometimes I didn't know what the cost was. I didn't figure out what the cost was ahead of time. I just plunged into it and then sometimes realized the cost was way higher than either I was able or prepared to pay. And so there was times I kind of failed my way forward because I didn't understand the cost. So I loved that you weighed out the costs first and then, moved forward, not being risk averse, but being risk realistic.
That's a good term, risk realistic. I like that.
Well, I am the word ninja,
I'll walk right into that.
So Marty, I know you come prepared today to talk about, how to see risk as an opportunity for accelerated outcomes. So I'm going to let you loose for a few minutes to share what you've prepared for us today, and then we'll talk about that a little bit more.
All right. Well, so I don't think this is a news flash. I mean, you can go back to the Greeks, ancient Chinese, a lot of early writings in the human experience talk about the essence of like the yin and the yang, right? The often said comment about the Chinese symbol for crisis is a combination of two characters, and it's opportunity and risk. So it's been thought through. It's been recognized. I don't think everybody's reading these books. I don't think everybody's reading ancient wisdom. I don't think people, even when they do read ancient wisdom, they don't think it's applicable anymore because it's ancient wisdom. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of a student of human nature. I think the thing that's consistent in the history of humanity is humanity. We probably, if T-Rex walked into my backyard and I was back there, with my dog, I would probably react the same way somebody did, back when T-Rex is around, if humans were around. I would run, scream, whatever. And if I saw, a source of food walk in and I happened to be starving to death, I would act like a human being, just like somebody did. So a lot of this is about human behavior, human characteristics, which is also the way our brain's wired, which gets us back to the risk reward issue. There's two parts of your brain that they've discovered, two elements that spark your behavior and your activity, your focused activity. One is called the task switch. So basically, that's what we do almost to the exclusion of anything else right now as human beings. The task switch is what allows the brain to focus very specifically on executing a very particular series of steps to accomplish a very particular and specific outcome. The other one is called the forager or explorer switch. And the reason they call it forager was because brain scientists believe that system, that switch, it had to exist in ancient times, because if you just sat in the same valley and you fished out the streams and you hunted out the woods, and all of a sudden all the berries and nuts have been eaten, and you didn't have the guts to go over to the next valley, you were done. So they call it forager because that's what they believe the brain evolved into, to go look for another source of food, or to go look for safety beyond their current safety zone and their comfort zone. And then once they got there and they established a camp, what did they do? The brain switches back over to the task-oriented elements, and they build a new camp and they start doing what they do. And so it's the explorer switch that allows us biologically to accept risk and to accept the risks related to an opportunity. So what's the opportunity in that example? The opportunity is, the risk is you starve to death where you're sitting. And the opportunity is if I take the chance to go over the ridge to the next valley, I may find plentiful game and food and fish and all that, and I'll be able to exist. And that's the risk reward function of the human brain. So every opportunity has risk. And almost everything that you perceive as risk is actually probably an opportunity in disguise. But we've been conditioned, and my third book comes out this year called Be Different. It's all about these kinds of brain tasks and functions, but we've been conditioned from when we're very, very young to see risk as bad, as negative. It's a threat. Avoid all risk. And what we've done is we've conditioned ourselves, mostly in the modern age, to where it's very, very difficult and very unnatural to shift over to that explorer switch, to allow us to go back and forth functionally as human beings. And what we find out is brain scientists find out we've camped out over here in the task area, the task focus, the optimization, the looking in the rearview mirror and seeing exactly how I did last week and measuring everything in great detail. So part of what you have to do is to see opportunity and to seize opportunity and appreciate opportunity is you have to understand that's the way your brain is designed, and you have that capability. You have the same brain as a 6-year-old. Unless you have some kind of biological medical problem with your brain is fully functional and capable mechanically of thinking big thoughts and dreaming and coming up with wild, crazy ideas and being awestruck by the opportunity that you're looking at. You just haven't been allowed to do that by everybody institutionally. So it's an interesting thing, and it changed my impression of what opportunity was, because I thought it was just, you were born with it. It was a DNA thing. You had risk takers who weren't afraid, and explorer is a good word, right? So all those people that went to the Arctic and then the Antarctic and into space and all these things, they just didn't care about the risk, right? They're just different, weird kind of people. Turns out they're just human beings. We all have the capability.
One thing you said there kind of captured my attention, and because I realized how true it was in my own life. We've always, I had always been taught, stay the safe route, don't take the risk. The risk is not worth it. What if you fail? You're probably going to fail, so don't take the risk, right? So those were the types of messages I remember. I think there were more subconscious messages. It's not like my dad said to me, oh, don't take a risk, because I saw my dad from time to time take a risk. But the overall arching sort of thing was that, a little bit of risk is okay as long as, and it was that as long as that kind of stuck in my brain all the time. And I think, you talk about a 6-year-old. So I've got 2 grandsons. One's 4, soon to be 5, and the other one's 1.5. So the 4-year-old, he's a relative risk taker. There's areas where he will always take a risk, and there's some areas he won't. He doesn't particularly like heights. So if heights are an option, that. Grandson number 2, though, 1.5 years, you put this kid on top of the fridge and he'll leap into your arms.
Yeah.
My daughter-in-law sent me a video. I'm like, okay, man, this kid just does not have any fear. And I think back to when I was a kid and the times that I did take risk. And I think one of the reasons why I became sort of risk averse is because I had taken risks a few times and got my hand slapped or got told that, you shouldn't do it, or, I didn't get the results that I wanted. So when I do things now, I have to recognize that, and I have to choose to act beyond what my brain is telling me I shouldn't do.
Yeah, that's true. And the problem is, it's when I say institutional influences when you're growing up, one of those institutions is friendship. one of those institutions is family. And if all of your friends are being raised the same way by the same parents who are risk adverse, if the teachers are telling you that's a dumb idea, I want you to study what's in the book. And if you think about everything in school, all the way up, probably short of a grad PhD, you're memorizing the past in every category, whether it's engineering, architecture, you're studying and regurgitating your absorption and capability to understand everything that happened before. They don't teach a new way of doing math. Let's just come up with a different way to count. Nobody ever does that. It's here's the way we count. So we've always counted. You better count the same way or you're going to get a low grade. So the conformity that is kind of imposed on us is a part of the environment. It's a cultural mechanism of influence. So it's almost impossible for somebody, even your younger grandson, to get through all of that gauntlet to become a young adult and suddenly go, I'm a different kind of person because I think different. It's really, really difficult. And what does the system, what does the society and the institutions do if you maintain that as you're going through the pipeline? You're getting stomped out all the time. I give the example of, you're 14 years old and you say you want to be a lead singer in a rock band or you want to be a lead guitarist in a rock band. The second it's uttered, I mean, who's going to say, you could probably do that if you studied, or hey, you know what? That's a great idea. What you're going to get it from everybody, there's no way you're ever going to be able to do that. You don't even know how to play a guitar yet. You don't even know how to sing. So you stop thinking that way. That's the insidious problem. It's not that you can't do it. It's that you start to not do it. And eventually you think you can't do it because you haven't done it. So, back kind of to the seizing of opportunity, this is a prerequisite. You have to have a mindset that's open and nimble and creative and ready to see things coming at you. And, not everything coming at you is going to be an opportunity. So you have to be able to identify threats. And there's a certain sequence of planning and kind of counteraction to a threat that's coming in at you. Obviously, if somebody throws a rock at your face, you see it as a threat, not as an opportunity, unless you catch the rock and throw it back because they armed you. See how that works? But, your first thought is, it's a threat, it's coming to me, I have to do something. And so you move to the side and the rock passes you by. If you're a business owner, if you're a parent, it's the same thing. Hopefully, if you have a mindset to look out on the horizon, because that's out on the horizons where the big opportunities and the big threats tend to be. And this is where it kind of folds into the strategic part of this, the visionary part of this, because if you're going down the railroad track, looking at the railroad track, and you're not listening and you're not looking up, you may think you're making progress in a linear fashion, but you don't see the train that's coming. Yeah. So you have to see these things, and to see them, you have to open up your mind and you have to think differently.
Wonderful, Marty. Wonderful. We're going to switch gears here. So I'm going to ask you the question that I ask every author who comes on the show. And I think I'd like you to apply it more to your nonfiction books and fiction books, because that's kind of the focus of the show. But what has been the good, the bad, and the ugly of writing, editing, and publishing your nonfiction books?
Well, I've helped several business people write their own books, their own business books. And it's funny, I had to explore your question with them because, first off, was I having the same kind of doubts in the beginning before I wrote Be Nimble that they were expressing to me before they even had a title for what they wanted to do? And I realized, in listening to them, that I was hearing what I was hearing in my own head. The voices in my head were saying the same thing. So the first hurdle for me, and it appears to be the first hurdle for at least the 2 or 3 guys I've helped, is why is anybody going to care about what I think? In other words, I am not an expert on the scale that other people I don't know, outside my employee population, outside my family and friends, that are actually say, wow, that guy Phil Smith really had a point there. Or, Susie Johnson's book is unbelievable and revealing, and I would have never thought that unless I read this book. So most of these guys are consumers of business books, and they're looking for that moment, that aha moment when they read, because they're looking for new ideas, new insights, and then they don't believe they can possibly generate those. So that's the very first hurdle, and like a lot of all writing, you have to get past that moment where you're concerned about credibility, and you just have to put the proverbial pen to paper. And I've told all of them, why don't you just start with an introduction chapter that lays out your personal history? Because everybody's going to want to know about you, because as they're reading the book, it's not a textbook. So, none of the textbooks have an intro saying, Dr. Kowalski was raised in Poland and he was chased by the Nazis. There's nothing in there to tell you what this guy wrote, who he is that wrote this textbook. You just start with the textbook, first lesson. But in a business book that's written for people in business, especially, I think it's very, very compelling to read about the journey of, you started with asking me about my journey. So in each case, they did that. And guess what? That's a natural thing and an easy thing to write about. Who's the expert of your own journey?
You are.
Right? Right. So you're already in an expert mode and you've broken the ice and you start putting pen to paper and all that. And the funny thing is, all three of these guys have published their books. And 2 out of the 3 have told me that the number one comment they get from people that are reading their books is how they loved the backstory. They loved that they learned about, the journey or the struggles, etc., that the author went through. Because through the entire rest of the book, of all these lessons and insights and ideas and experiences and case studies, whatever, they had a vision in their mind of this person that had gone through all this to get to this point to share it with us. So I think that's the consistent thing I've found so far with business. Probably technical book writers, everybody. If you were a cook and you want to write a book about cooking, the first thing is, well, every recipe's already been written down. So you cancel yourself out. I don't think that's good. So that's the first big step, the first big leap, in my opinion. Of course, the rest of the problem is getting the rest of the book on screen or on paper. And I tell everybody, break it up. If it's going to be instructional, tutorial, break it up like a lesson plan. Break it up in small chunks. Baby step your way through, and you chunk it into blocks like you're going to teach somebody about sales. So you say, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at how to come up with sales targets and how to qualify them, and then, you walk them through. And then what happens is, because they know the business that they're talking about and writing about, they don't get intimidated.
Yeah.
They take it one little tiny step at a time, and all of a sudden one day they look up and they're at chapter 27, and now they got to come up with a summary or an ending comment, and they're like, oh wow. And just do it every day. That's the last piece. Make it a discipline. I usually write about 5:30 in the morning to about 7. Nobody's calling me, nobody's texting me. I have kind of my time, and I tell people, write a chapter, write a sentence, write two paragraphs, whatever it is that you can come out with, until you start to feel resistance, until you start to feel like your mind isn't coming up with, then stop. And I do it 7 days a week. So when I come back the next day, I read like the last two chapters or paragraphs, not 2 chapters, last 2 paragraphs I wrote. I kind of get in sync with what the storyline was, and then I start writing again. And if I'm away from it for a day, or I didn't write very much the prior day, I'm hungry the next morning. I mean, I'm thinking about, I got to get to this because ideas are flying around. That's the gist of the advice I give everybody, because I lived that, and I've been able to repeat books because of that process.
Love it, Marty. Well, we are out of time. Marty, we have enough time for you to share a brief final thought. And for the people who have really enjoyed this conversation, how can they connect with you?
Well, they go to martystrongbenimble.com. That's my author website. Got everything about my public speaking programs, etc. I'm obviously on Amazon under Marty Strong. My novels are ML Strong. The last thing I think I'd like to leave everybody with, kind of back to some of the points we made before. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to stop listening to everybody, all the naysayers around you. You have to just take a moment every day to just clear your mind of all those outside voices and say, what do I want to do? And what's preventing me from taking that first step, starting that journey? And I think if you can do that, and you take that first step, and then you take that second step, you start to see traction, and then you start to feel momentum. And if you can get down that path, whether it's writing a short story, whether it's writing a speech, writing a letter, you'll find that it gets easier each and every time you go through that exercise. But you first have to clear your mind of all that negative. And most of what's rattling around your head that's negative has been fed to you from the outside. So it's not your own mind. Reject all that stuff, clear it out, and execute. Have fun.
Thank you so much, Marty. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing from your knowledge and wisdom today. Audience, if you're still watching at this point, I highly recommend that you check out episode 478. So only maybe about 15 episodes back, it's Principles of Brave Influence with Exane. Another wonderful episode that's going to help you to grow your mindset and be able to take risks more naturally. If you're watching on YouTube, You know the routine. The thumbnail is here on the screen for you to click on. If you're on your favorite podcast app, just use that finger and swipe back a few. I just want to encourage you as we end today that risk is a part of an entrepreneurship and even failure, but neither one of those should ever stop you from becoming the true entrepreneur that you were meant to be. Have a great day, everyone, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.
You've been listening to the Author to Authority podcast. The extraordinary word ninja, Kim Thompson Pinder, has helped over 200 entrepreneurs, professionals, speakers, and coaches write and publish their books that have become incredible marketing tools for their business. And many of those have gone on to become Amazon best-selling authors and have used their books to land high-level clients and get on big stages. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at www.authortoauthoritypodcast.com. See you next time.